Are we on the air? Okay. Um, I put out the on Saturday that I was going to do a fast podcast on the changes that will be upcoming in the real estate industry dealing with brokerage commissions. And I'm going to go over a report. I did some of it on my podcast Saturday night, but I want to go a little bit more into depth with it. Um, and you're going to see a lot of agents, a lot of brokers, talk about it's really not going to be that much of a change to it. Uh, but there is, and I just wanted to be upfront about it, and I think it's going to be a major change in the industry, but I think it's a good change. All right. Um, how it came about, maybe we should go over that first because sellers were upset that in their commission structure that usually if it's half of the commission. So again, if the full commission is 6%, it's stated in the agreement, at least in the state of Virginia, it's stated that we're going to give 3% of that 6% to the selling agency. The selling agency, they use that term, but it's really the buying agency, right? The agency that represents the buyer. And again, in the state of Virginia, that's clearly stated. When people saying, I didn't know they were going to do that, maybe there's some states that they don't have that in the agreement or in the addendums or in the contract. Um, but in Virginia, we do. The real argument is saying, well, why do I have to pay for the buyer's representation? And just to take a little side note, when I came down from New York City, where I was doing real estate, to Virginia, and they started using, or well, maybe not start using, but they already were using buyer's representation. It took me a while to understand that. We weren't doing that in New York. It might have changed. I've been down here now 18 years, but basically, your your seller of the house, the owner of the house, was your client, and your potential buyers are your customers. So you have to be fair and honest to your customers, right? People who are going to come and buy the house. But you have a fiduciary responsibility for the seller to act in his or her best interest. An example being that you get them the best price, and then that you don't give out pertinent information to that buyer. Like for instance, if the house was listed at 300,000, but the seller told you, the listing agent, that I'm willing to go down to 280, and if you say that right off the bat, oh, the house is 300, but he'll take 280. You're not working in the best interest of your client, the seller. So we didn't have that. When I came down to Virginia, I learned about buyer's representation. And so the buyer's agent works in the best interest of the buyer and tries to get them the best deal on the house and the best, if they're offering, if the buyer wants uh, some repairs to be done on the house and so forth. So uh, that's a good thing to have that buyer's representation. So the seller was saying, well, why, if they're getting that service, um, why am I paying for it? The same way where you have two people in a lawsuit, one person, either it's the plaintiff or the defendant, paying their own bill, and they say, well, why am I paying the bill of the plaintiff? or vice versa. So it's a very good point, because let's say the average house in the Hampton Roads area is 300,000, right? So 6% of 300,000, that's $18,000. That's a lot of money, and especially if you just bought your house maybe 3-4 years ago, and if you have to sell it for some reason, if you're in the military and you're being sent to another place in America, or you're being deployed, or you're going through a divorce, whatever, you're having financial difficulties, the sale of the house, even if the home price increases, you're most likely going to have to bring money to the table. At 3%, it's not that bad. You may still have to, but they're cutting it down to $8,000. Is that right? I said the house is 300,000, 6 is 18,000. I'm sorry, $9,000. It's not as bad. It still might hurt, but still definitely not as bad as 18,000. So, in a way, I have to agree with the seller. Why am I paying that? I mean, I've had people, when I've listed homes, and when I told them how much I have to pay commissions, they said, "What? Get out of here!" I mean, that's a heck of a lot of money, and it only works well, of course, if you, even if you bought your house pre-pandemic, home prices went up greatly. Okay, but if you just bought it recently and you're already you purchased within this high market value, high home prices of homes, and if you had to sell within the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, you're not really going to recoup anything, and you might have to bring money to the table. But again, at 3%, that's not too bad. So I believe that doing this, with allowing the buyer to pay for their own brokerage fee, is a good thing. Okay. Now, what's going to happen? And I'll just get the article that I'm working with. This going to be a lot of articles written about this. Okay. And I highlighted some of the areas, and for some reason, the highlight came out all over the place. But right in this area here, in addition to the full $18 million settlement amount, which be paid into a court-controlled trust over a 4-year period, the National Association of Realtors has also agreed to abolish all rules allowing seller agents to set compensation to buyer's agents. It also agreed to prohibit broker compensation appearing on the MLS fields. So on the multiple listing service, it won't show anymore what commission is being paid to the broker, because they want the buyer now to negotiate and have no knowledge of what is being paid to the listing firm. So this has to be approved, and it's going to be approved most likely in July, that this change has to be made. Okay. So they bring over here the opportunity for top agents. But when I'm going to, even when I go into that, I mean, that's jumping ahead to what I wanted to say. What I wanted to bring up here is my kind of like bullet pointing the aspects of this article and what will change. I'm going to make it just a little bit larger. Okay. Changes in the real estate market, real estate industry after the NAR Settlement. So seller may or may not pay buyer brokerage commission. Now, the thing to remember that the seller might say, "All right, I'll pay their commission. I want my house to be sold quickly. I when I'm selling my house, I have a lot of equity. I don't have problem paying the 6%, 3% going to the buyer's agent. I have a problem with that." Or what might happen, buyer will pay his own or her own buyer brokerage commission, and they can negotiate that with the agent. And again, this is all brand new, so there's going to be a lot of planning in this, a lot of logistics, a lot of trial and error. But perhaps the buyer can negotiate with the agent, or it's very possible they may choose not to use an agent at all. Not recommend another good idea. And the the offshoot of that, there might be agents who say you could hire me to to advise you, to help you get the contract written, whatever. And there might be almost like a limited liability field, limited liability broker, which is more so with sellers. They'll say, all right, we'll put, there's a fee for putting the house on the multiple listing service. And there's a fee for us to, put signs on your property, but that's all we're going to do. And when there's a buyer that's interested, whether they have representation or the buyer's calling themselves, you deal with it. We're not going to negotiate. So they have it bulleted out, as it would be, of what you're paying for. So that might happen too on the buyer side, where the buyer will say, okay, I would like you to write a contract. I would like you to put together the home inspection, set that up, and might be a checkoff list what to do. So that's all the changes that are coming up. May happen, it may not happen that way, where there'll be a limited service buyer brokerage. It could be. Buyers agents will have to work on volume because of less buyers wanting to use the agent. So this is what I get a kick out of the real estate industry, where someone will put on Facebook, this month I did over $1 million in sales, and that's good. I'm happy for them, but that could have just been 2 houses, right? It makes it sound like they sold 5, 6, 7 homes, all right, but because the price of homes are so big, in Virginia Beach, that could be been 1 sale for the whole month. Now, if you're making $2,000 a sale, $3,000 a sale, you really have to push and not be an immediate success where your agency is blowing you up. You really have to put the metal to the pedal to make decent money. Now, I'm saying that for a whole bunch of reasons, actually, because the real estate industry, to be successful in it, you have to do it full time. All right. And you have to have that volume of leads coming in. And some agents pay a lot of money for their leads, maybe $2,000 or $3,000 a month. And you'll get leads from Zillow, and a lot of times these leads, and this is the other thing, you get these leads, but you find out that they're dealing with 10 other agents. The buyers don't know that once they have an agent they like, they could use that agent to have him or her show every single property that's in the southeastern portion of Virginia. But they'll know that now because they have to pay for the use of an agent. So once they call, you get a lead, and say, okay, you can hire me, but there's going to be a fee, okay? And you might just have a flat fee for showing properties, and then if you close a property, well, then that closing amount, whether the seller's paying it or they'll be wiped out, and you get your commission, whether it's 2% or 3%. But I think buyers will then have to learn that, we're not charity work. Buyer agents, because I've given out so much um, uh, consultation. I've sent out listings. I gave my opinion on listings and et cetera, and nothing came about from it. Maybe it was my fault, but real estate people do a lot of work before they finally get paid. And I think if buyers know that if they are going to use an agent, they're going to have to pay for it. And I'd rather there be less time or more time between buyers who are actually serious and they say, okay, we will pay you, than doing a whole bunch of work for buyers who may not even be ready to purchase. They're just feeling the market, or they've spoken to 100 different agents. So I kind of like this, that the buyer has to pay the commission. So what's also going to happen is there will be a rise in companies that will offer to list properties for less commission. I'm already seeing that. One is called Clever. And there'll be an increase in that. So it may, well, most likely, when they do that, they're looking for listings. So they'll get paid. And even if they do the 2%, of the price of the home, they'll still do very well, because they'll be working on the volume, because a lot of the people will go to them and list their properties. It's like, to give you a perfect, very simple analogy, when Henry Ford came about on the automaking scene, and at that time, cars were extremely, extremely expensive. And it was the people who bought them were the ones who were rich. But Henry Ford said, well, let's find a way to lower the cost of the cars, the making of the cars, and we'll pass that to the buyers. We'll mass produce them, but even though they will cost less, we'll make more money because we're selling in volume. So instead of selling 3 cars a month, we'll sell 300 cars a month. So these companies that do that will make money. All right. It's going to, again, this change in the commission structure, it's really going to hurt more of the buyer. And I don't even want to say hurt, but it's going to be the buyer agent who really is going to have to make the adjustment and see how we could make this work for us, for the buyer's agent. So I also going to see a rise in agents leaving the industry, because there'd probably be a drop in the potential buyer's pool of the ones who want to use an agent, who's willing to spend, let's say, $9,000 on a $300,000 house. Now there'll be a way to combat that. Like, they might try to build that commission into the mortgage. So to put it very simply, if they were getting a mortgage for $300,000, they could see if they could actually get a mortgage for $309,000 and take that $9,000 and pay their agent. The only key to that is that the house will have to appraise at that higher amount. Otherwise, the bank will give you that loan. I don't know if I'm back on the air. So the other thing, if I don't know if I'm on or off, I just saw that I was disconnected. Like the internet went down for a minute. But brokerage companies may give an agent a drawer or base commission if they see lots of agents leaving the industry. So I'm going to end it here because I don't know if I'm still. Am I on the air? And